Welcome to today's conversation on the When Friends Come Over podcast. I am joined by my friend Tom Lancaster, currently in Zurich, but from England. And when I was thinking about who I would want to have the conversation with about conversations, Tom, you were the first person who came to my mind. Mainly, I want to say it's because even when I hear you speak live in the community that you're building in Zurich, it felt like a conversation. And so that to me was like an easy, who do I want to start the conversation with on conversations?
I love that.
It would be Tom Lancaster. And also because conversations is such a big part of When Friends Come Over, it's connection, conversations, and community. This initial one about conversations is really not exactly an overview, but I guess to me, I want to just give people a taster of why I think conversations are so important. And so, yeah, thanks for being up for it, Tom.
I love it. Thank you so much. That's probably one of the biggest compliments to tell me that you think a conversation with me is probably one of the strengths and things that I try to do really well. Anyway, let's see how many times we can say conversations.
I know.
We should have like a counter. But no, thank you so much for inviting me on and for creating the space for a dialogue.
Well, on top of that, you and I we've been friends for maybe you weren't friends with me for the first year.
We weren't enemies.
We weren't enemies.
We knew each other.
But for maybe 13, 14 years,
yeah,
I think we've had some really fun and deep conversations. And yeah, I think that I just want to kick it off because there's a few things I want to unpack. But the first thing I'd love to ask you, Tom, and because you have such a finger, is that the right word? A fingerprint?
Finger on the pulse?
Yeah, that's it.
A fingerprint?
On culture and things that are going on around the world. I would love to know what your perspective is on the not current situation, but what your current perspective is on conversations in the world today.
Gosh, that's a great question. It's a great starting point. I think like every generation, I think problems aren't unique to our generation, are they? Like the tensions that we face and the struggles, I suppose, of us kind of getting along, they're not unique to our generation. I think every generation has faced some level of tension and struggle. And I think the thing that has pushed people forward, pushed humanity forward and drawn humanity closer together, I think at the core of that has been conversations. And if we can learn to have good, healthy conversations, then we probably can solve a lot of the tension and issues that we are faced with. I think in relationships, a lot of healthy relationships are not the absence of conflicts, they're the management of conflict, the intentional management of conflict, which is good conversations. My mom used to always tell us, don't let the sun go down on your anger, which was another way of saying, talk it out. Like, what's going on? Like, let's figure this out before we go to bed tonight. So I grew up in a house. I was a single child to a single mom, and we would always have conversations, and it would be our method of resolve. So I think conversation is a huge untapped resource that is in our toolbox or our arsenal, as it were. And I think the better we get at having good conversations, the better we'll get at getting along. The better we'll get at moving our generation forward, moving humanity forward. And I think it's overlooked, but I think it's incredibly useful and beneficial. And if we can get good at it, then we'll get a lot better at other stuff as well.
Just as you were saying that and you said, get along, I guess it just reminded me of the more that we have conversations, the more that we get to know the other person, to know more about them and the way that they're wired and the way that we can better approach conversations that serve them better. But we only really do that through having conversations to be like, oh, actually, when I have a conversation with you like this, it's just better. And because we keep talking and keep the dialogue open, so just when you said get along, I was like, that's so true. The more that you have conversations with people, the more you get along with them because you know them better.
And I guess that breaks down what is the anatomy of a conversation. Like, it isn't somebody just talking to somebody else, which I think when you said, when I speak live, it feels like a conversation. I love that, because I hope that it isn't just like a monologue to somebody. Here's my speech. I've prepared and I'm talking to you. I think there should be some back and forth, and that is the anatomy of conversation. It's not just let's talk. To say let's have a conversation is let's do both talking and listening. And when you listen, you discover so much more about the person, which you use the word serve. And I think that's the point, is you learn to serve better when you understand better, and you understand better when you listen better, and you discover what it is that somebody actually needs from you. And then it enables you, I suppose, to, like, not to make this all about relationships, but like, relationship is a good starting point for that. You will probably build healthy relationships if you understand each other. And the way to that really is listening better, isn't it? Discovering, being curious, unpacking who somebody is. And I think that leads to giving us good directions and pathways to get along.
And that's there are a few things I want to kind of dive into, but before I skip over the other part of that question, I was really thinking about conversations in today's culture as well. And just your, I guess, opinion, your perspective on this. What do you think, or do you think that texting back and forth, whether that's just texting or whether it's voice messages, would you consider that to be a conversation or not?
I think it's a form of it. Okay. For sure. And you know, we've been friends for a long time, and because you travel so much, a lot of that is at distance, and sometimes text is the best way to, I suppose, keep a conversation live. And it might be that it's sometimes shallow swimming, but it keeps a conversation alive. And I think what's good about that is what it does is, when you are in person, you don't go, oh gosh, we've got to, you know, put our toe in the water and get back to conversation, because you're picking up where you've left off. I think text and voice notes and stuff is great for just keeping something alive, but there's a place for in-person, physical, being in each other's presence, having a conversation. And I think some things that need to be talked about can't be done over text. There's something about presence, and I think it's valuable to put time aside for that, to say this conversation needs presence, so let's get in the same room, not just to do something that's very important over something like text. Right. I think there's some things that are worth making the time, sitting in a room, traveling, whatever needs to happen. I suppose if all we rely on is text, then all we are doing really is, it's kind of like all we're doing is shallow conversation. Yeah, it isn't exactly, but it's hard to read emotions through text. Like,
unless I guess it's that, like we were saying about, unless you know the person and you've built up that, I guess, track record to be like, oh, I know exactly why they texted that way. So I guess it's like, if you've got the street cred in the bank, to be like, I got you, that's how that person's flowing at the moment, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that probably makes it easier.
Yeah. But what do you think the role of small talk plays in a conversation?
That's so interesting. I hate small talk.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you.
But I also I hate it, but I also love it. I think what I hate is when it's used wrongly. I think when it's used well and it's used as a shallow end to a deep end, I think it's good. The problem I have is when people can't get out of the shallow end. And I've done this. I've had coffee with people and I'm going, we're 45 minutes into this and we're still talking about the weather. And my goal is constantly like, let's move deeper into like, hey, how's that situation that's really like in the back of your mind. So for me, if we stay in small talk, like, there's a place, there's a use, there's a purpose to small talk. And I think it is, it's so you don't deep dive straight into as soon as you see somebody like what's your diagnosis? It's just warming up to it. And I come from a culture, I think, in England where we're very good at small talk. We'll do a lot of like, how's the weather, blah, 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 for a long time. And then I'm now in a culture where we're not very good at small talk. And I see the value of both of them. So I see the value of being able to stand next to someone on a tram, open conversation, and then eventually get to depth. And I think whenever I do talk to someone for the first time, I try and use small talk as a starting point. But it is, I know that when I start, I'm moving towards, I want to get to know somebody. I want to break like through the barrier of like that small talk. So I think you've got to use it well. My problem is just when people don't use it well and you end up being like we're just, all we do now is small talk. I struggle with that. I want to run as far as I can away from that. It's just,
I guess
it frustrates me.
It's trying to find that common ground earlier that then may allow you to, I guess, dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and it's a skill, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I love, I guess, observing it in people and just seeing seeing that unfold in myself, because I know if I need to small talk, I could small talk for hours. I've had to do it. I enjoy doing it because it was serving, my job and my role, and I really enjoyed it. But then I also knew that I was like, I'm going to be drained. I need to then distance myself. So it for sure plays its part, definitely. I would love to, I guess, because this is, about having effortless conversations, and that's really what I would love to encourage in myself, to get better at having effortless conversations. But what would you say maybe make up, like if there was like 5 key elements that make up an effortless conversation? If 5's too many, you can go for 3.
We're about to write a book here. 5 key elements of a good conversation.
An effortless, an effortless conversation. I don't need to put words in your mouth because I know you have this in the bank.
Yeah, well, I think this might sound contradictory, but I think it's probably it's a lack of agenda, but the presence of purpose. Do you know
don't need to say any more, but you can.
But I think like there's a difference between agenda and purpose. Agenda, it feels like I want something from you in this conversation. That feels like it's, I'm using you in this conversation. I want to get some information, or I want you to do something for me. So I have an agenda in it. I think it's lack of that, but the intentionality of purpose, the presence of purpose. I think there's a reason we're having a conversation. We're not just talking because we're in proximity. There's a purpose to this, and that purpose, I think you've got to know that. But we're going to deepen a friendship, or I'm going to add value to you, or I'm going to spot something in you. I want to recognize it and I want to celebrate it because I want you to go away from this conversation feeling valued. That might seem intense, but I think loosely, whenever I do have conversations, that's the kind of stuff that for me is in the back of my mind. There's got to be purpose to this. I want you to leave feeling valued. I want our interaction to have an impact on you, that you go away going, gosh, I'd never thought of it like that. Or that's good language for that. Or gosh, I've been noticing that in me and somebody else now noticed it. Maybe it's true. So I think it's that level of purpose. And I think there's probably a lot of work to be done to make sure that it doesn't feel like I'm in this conversation because I want to get something at the end of it. I think those 2 things for me are what make it effortless and make it graceful. I mean, the thing that makes it difficult to have a conversation is when, and there's so much, no one loves a sales pitch. And those conversations are awkward and uncomfortable. I've even found myself, if I feel like I'm getting into that in my business, I'm always like, this is no longer a nice conversation, because I feel like I'm now trying to gain something from this and close this with a win of some kind. And I think those are uncomfortable. So I think it's removing those things that make it a little bit more like effortless and at ease. And even because if people listen to this and they're like, conversations is a part of my job, I need conversations to make a sale. I think when you're trying to get a closed win in a conversation of like, I'm trying to convince you to come over to my side, that's the kind of stuff that I think makes it like, this isn't a conversation, this is a sales pitch.
Right.
And I think the removal of that, and that can be done in a business setting too, but the removal of that feeling and sense, I think helps the conversation continue. And there's room to pick up later. There's room for a closure at some point. But I think the point of conversation is if you've got an effortless conversation, let's say it like that, there's a lot more chance that you want to be involved in that conversation again. I would love to come back to it. Like, let's pick this up another time. Of course, it was effortless. It was easy. If I'm trying to get a win out of you, you're probably going to be like, I'm going to hang up the phone as soon as I can. And next time he calls, I'm not answering.
Yeah.
So,
because we have, I guess that's a great, not side note, but on a side note, without a doubt, there will be a whole podcast that is dedicated to hidden agendas in friendships.
Right.
Without a doubt. I know I've been guilty of them, and I for sure know that I now have an allergic reaction to them.
Yeah.
And I want to dedicate something solely to that. So thank you for saying that. Yeah. I'm curious to know, because I'm such a, practical person, in terms of like location, do you think that plays a really important part in having, not just the shallow conversations that you can have on, the train or things like that, but, for example, I had a coffee with one of our mutual friends like a week ago, and we were in a coffee shop and we had a great time. It was really nice. We had a great conversation. But then this week when we met up, we were in a park and the conversation was just completely different and more deep. And, and I was really like, I've had conversations with this person for years. What was it so different today? And I was like, I think it was because we were in a park, not a coffee shop where there was a lot of, external things going on. We felt a little bit rushed in some parts of it. So I was just curious, do you think that location plays a big part in having good conversations?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good thing to pick up on and to observe, that you'd have a different conversation in nature, in a park, walking even maybe, rather than sat in a coffee shop. I'm huge on environment and atmosphere. I think like even at home, like I think every day when I get home from work, I walk into the house and I'm like, I need to put some music on. And partly that is like, it's dinner and it's wind down. So I sense straight away, I think the room needs this in order for us to do dinner and wind down well. And if it's a bit chaotic, which at the moment with our youngest boy, it's always chaotic, then my go-to is like peaceful music. I want to create an atmosphere. So that's very important to me in my life. And I think depending on the conversation, choosing an intentional environment to suit that, to create space for, and to create an environment to make sure that conversation goes well, I think it's going to make a big difference, isn't it? It's going to be hard to have an intimate, serious conversation in a playground with a bunch of kids running around. So I think it's like, that's an interesting thing to observe, to pick up on.
Yeah.
That you noticed that. Yeah.
In saying that was probably because I knew we were having this conversation today, that I was like, wow, actually that happened recently, but I can really see that our conversations were different. And I really would have put it down to the environment. And I think on that, I have started a tradition in When Friends Come Over podcast, where I want to give the guests a scenario and would love to know what you would do in this scenario.
Fun. Okay, this is fun. I'll be honest. Okay. I'll be very honest. Okay.
So the scenario is you're someone who loves conversations, and you're going, for example, maybe on a date, maybe you're going out with a group of friends, or you're just going out with family or something like that. And you're just really, thinking, I love these people. I think we're going to have a great conversation. I've been craving connection and conversation with these people. So you go out and you've got that intention, and it's a really good intention. But you go there, and for example, if it's just one other person, that person just feels really disengaged. They're not present. Their energy doesn't feel great, but you're going to spend the next, say, like 2 hours with them.
Yikes.
Without coming across controlling, which I don't know, Tom, if you know that I'm a recovering
Recovering,
control
yes, recovering.
control person who would want to instantly want to control the environment or
Yeah.
speak up about that, or come across judgmental, what would you do in that situation to, like, I guess, like I said, not control or judge the situation, but you still want to have a good time. But yeah, I'm just curious, what advice would you give to someone who might be in that situation? Because I think we all have been at different times, or have been the other person as well.
That's actually very difficult. I don't know how recovering I am. I think my first honest thoughts are I would probably lean towards I want to do something about this. And it would either be cut the thing short. Hey, like, I'm gonna have to get going soon, or address it. But those are very, very controlling things to say.
So, okay, if you were to address it then, because I guess to me, it's that thing of, I would for sure want to address it, but I know that can come from a good place sometimes. But I guess what would be your go-to more calmer way of addressing it to make that other person still feel seen?
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself in the situation, sat at a chair at dinner with someone I've not seen for a long time, a buddy, and he's on his phone. Yeah. And if it's a good friend, I think I would want to be like, and I don't know that this is bad, but I would want to be like, hey, dude, mate, I've probably got an hour with you. I haven't seen you for a long time. There's a few things that are on my heart, my mind, that I'd love to have a chat with you about. And I don't think I would be like, hey, can you put your phone down? I think I would try to subtly make the table more interesting than the phone. I think that's what I would do. Because the controlling part of me would be like, and I would, like, some relationships you can do that. I could say to my mom, hey, mom, can you put your phone down? I want to chat with you. I could do that. Or, in my marriage, I could do that. And my wife could do that to me as well. And there's safety there. But I think I probably would try to subtly, skillfully say, like, just make that environment, like, it's more interesting to have a conversation than be stuck on your phone. And I think, again, that takes skill, but it's a nicer way of drawing somebody into this. We're here to have a conversation. We're not here to be sat on our phone, for example, and be disengaged. And if that didn't work, I'd probably just mark it and be like, well, okay, maybe I won't do this again.
I guess that would be a great opportunity to recognize, did I not communicate my boundaries, or like that kind of thing of, well, going, I didn't think I protected my time very well. And I get that there's moments where you might take up your phone if you're like ordering or something like that, but I guess it's just you can tell it's not even just the phone. You can just tell when someone is not present. Sure. And you're kind of just, I guess, wanting to protect yourself, but you're also going, I really want to have a conversation with this person because I like them, but not if it's going to violate, I guess, for sure, something within me.
And I think if it's a good friend, then I think let's say that, let's put this in the category of you sat with a good friend. It's not a new relationship.
Yeah, sure.
I think if someone's disengaged, then probably the healthiest thing to do is, I'm not going to play victim here and feel like they're disrespecting me. Maybe there's something wrong. Maybe they're disengaged for a reason. And maybe what they need right now is for me to serve them in that way as a friend.
And sit with them
and discover and open, like create some vulnerability in them and open up, and some safety, and hey, is there some stuff going on? And maybe, oh, hey, actually it's close to the anniversary of such a thing that happened, and I suppose that's just been playing on my mind. I think if someone's not easily disengaged, then they are at a particular time, then there's most likely a reason for it, stress at work, whatever it may be. And I always
but they're not ready to talk about as well.
Yeah, they might not be ready to. Yeah. But I think as a friend, like, that's probably one of the markers of a good friend for me as well, is someone that can recognize that and address it and say, hey, is it something you want to talk about? And the person might go, you know what, no, but thanks for bringing it up. I'll try and push it aside so we can actually enjoy our time tonight. Okay, great. Yeah. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here.
Yeah.
But I think if it's a new relationship, that's different, isn't it? If you sit down with someone for the first time, let's say you go out on a first date with someone and they're disengaged. To be honest, I think my advice, if it was my daughter that came back and said, hey, I went on a date and she's nowhere near ever gonna
say
for a date,
no.
ever. But when she's 72, if she decides to go on a date, I think if she said, hey, he was just disengaged for the whole hour, I'd say you don't deserve that. I'd say next time if you sit down and someone is like that with you, I think I would say get up and leave.
Because I guess to me it's whenever I have conversations, even if I've just met them quite early on, I'd want them to feel a sense of this person has some standards.
Sure.
In that too. So I guess there's a part of me that would recognize, but I have the dancing balance of going, no, you have some control, but yes, you have standards too.
Yeah, and I think this comes back down to what this whole thing is about, is the art of conversation. It's letting somebody, let's say it's the first date scenario, it's letting, and this is probably what I would actually say to my 72-year-old daughter on my first date, is not like get up and leave, but skillfully articulate in a gentle and kind way that you have some boundaries. And if you put your time aside to go on the first date, to spend an hour in a restaurant with somebody, you expect them to at least reciprocate that by being present. And I think I would try and teach her to communicate that well. So there isn't a sense of frustration and control and, hey, put your phone down, we're on a first date. But it's, it is setting those boundaries and doing it in such a, I think, an articulate way that lets them know, oh gosh, yeah, that isn't fair.
Or finding, I was just thinking, like, if I'm in that situation, or if, just with friends as well, where I'm kind of like, you know what, I don't want to be the person who says, hey, we're meant to be here to have a conversation, but everyone's kind of on their phone. I think that's when I would intentionally be like, well, the waiter is willing to talk to me, and I think they have to talk to us. So I'll start a conversation. I guess it's finding the other angles of going, these people at the other table, they seem friendly. I guess it's that adopting that observation skill of like, well, if you're not going to have a conversation with me, there's lots of other things that will.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think some people are attuned a lot more to environments. So for some people, it's just the wrong environment for a conversation.
Yeah,
someone might say, hey, let's meet at such and such and we'll all have a coffee. And it's just, there's some coffee shops, I forget the name of one particular, but it's like rave music, and that's kind of their vibe. That is not the coffee shop to go to have a conversation. So I think if you go there with a group and you're like, I'm frustrated, why is no one talking? I think you've got to try your best to switch on to reading, what environment are we in? Is this is this conducive to conversation? And if you're going somewhere to have conversation, this is probably the 1,000th time we've said conversation, but if you are going somewhere to have a conversation, you've got to choose the right environment. Because you can't be frustrated if you're in a cinema watching a movie and you're like, why is no one talking?
Right. So I want to go into that because I think absolutely the environment, and just, going to wrap up in a little bit. And I'd love to, because it will be a whole podcast of its own, without a doubt, about vulnerability in friendships and creating that for when friends come over in that particular setting. But how do you think someone like you, because I know that you have a great energy when it comes to being able to create, a sense of, I feel like I could open up about something with Tom and know that it's in a trusted, space. What would you say to someone who wants to be able to be known to have more vulnerable conversations with, but they feel that it's a little bit of a struggle for them? So is there any, I guess, tips that you might come across like this, have this kind of energy? What's your thoughts?
Gosh, I think to create space where people can be vulnerable, I think you have to take the first step and be vulnerable with people. I think you have to show people that you're willing to go there yourself. And that for me is setting the tone in a relationship, in a conversation. It's it creates space, because if you're open and vulnerable and you take the mask off, as it were, and you sit down and you start a conversation with authenticity, I think it invites people into authenticity themselves. Because if I'm gonna share like some vulnerable parts of me, then I think what I'm saying is I trust you with what I'm saying. I don't need to say, don't tell anyone this. I'm showing you what it looks like to trust. I think it's modeling it. It's not saying, hey, can I trust you with what I'm about to share? It's just, this is an act of trust by me telling you I'm struggling at the moment in my mind with these repetitive thoughts that are leading me down this pathway. And that's just been something recently that I'm struggling with. I've been journaling it. It's tough. How do you handle that? I think what that does is it says, here's a wound or a painful part of me, and it creates space. And for me, that's an important part of being human. I think all my relationships, and maybe to a fault, all of them might go in with a level of vulnerability. I probably need to learn how to, I think, maybe just recognize what some relationships are, and not all of them require that level of depth and vulnerability.
Sure. Yeah.
That's probably, I don't know, that's probably something I've got to deal with. But I think if you really want to be a safe place for somebody, then you've got to let them know that they're a safe place for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you think what I've known from you, and I'm so grateful for that answer, and that you didn't follow the script in my head, so thank you for that.
Good, I'm glad I didn't. My worst nightmare is to follow someone else's script.
Is that the energy that I've always felt from you is that you are genuine, that you look at people, and that it seems to be that you're very, I guess it would just be presence as well, but I would say that for someone to feel that they could open up is that sense of, oh, this person just feels really like genuine. It seems it's that whole no hidden agenda. It's not like, they're going to try and fix me, or they're going to try and prescribe something to me. They just feel like a really good listener. So that's probably the thing that I thought you might have maybe touched on a little bit, was just listening is for sure such a great part of conversations. Would you agree?
I agree, yeah. And I think I appreciate you recognizing that and mentioning it. I think presence too, going back to what you said, if someone's disengaged, there's no way you're going to be vulnerable with someone that's not present. I think when you get a sense of this person's here right now, and they're in the restaurant or they're in the coffee shop, and they're not thinking about what's next. They've left what was before outside, and they are currently right here. I think all of that is essential. And I suppose for me, I haven't been thinking about it, but I've got a long list of stuff today, projects that need to be done. So once this podcast finishes, I'll transition from podcast to this next season of the day, as it were. And I think that's maybe difficult for some people to do, is to like be able to shelve stuff and be present, to just compartmentalize things. And I think that's what a good conversation really is. It is all my other worries, concerns, and projects and things have been pushed aside for a moment because I'm here. And listen, I think it's, I found myself sometimes going, oh, I've got too much on today. I probably shouldn't have said yes to this. That's my fault. So in those situations, I say to myself, I got to be more careful in future by not putting too many meetings in a day, because I know I've got a lot of work, but I've said yes to this. So all the other stuff is pushed aside. I'm going to be present. And I try to do that as much as possible. And sometimes, again, that's, I think, to my fault. Sometimes I suffer because I'm so relational. So for me, I would put 3 or 4 meetings in a day, every day of the week. But I also got a lot of projects that need work on, so I shouldn't do that. So I'm trying to learn to know my boundaries and know my limits. But whenever I am in the room with somebody,
you are, yeah.
I try and at least be like, I've made the effort to be here, so I might as well be here fully.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't
Great.
always
Thank
do
you
that
for that.
well. Let me say that, because
Oh,
I don't always do it well. And sometimes I think the people you care about and love the most are the people that you give your worst to, in that sense, because you feel so casual and comfortable. So there's 1,000% times at the dinner table where I'm like, I'm still processing work, and I'm
right.
trying to learn to like leave that at the door before I go home as well.
Oh, but that would be, yeah, that would for sure be a hard thing to do consistently. So I think just knowing that you're trying is the best that you can do as well. Listen, I would definitely want to wrap up because I so appreciate your time, Tom.
It's been so great.
So I have a fun little one at the end, but I wanted to ask you the question of, and I for sure hope I'm wording it well, is what do you think are some things that people are left with feeling after a good conversation?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is value. That you are left with some amount of value.
Yeah.
Some like, oh gosh, that added to my life. Like, I'm going away with something here, whether it's encouragement, whether it's a new thought, whether it's affirmation, whether it's just a bit of joy because you had a good conversation. I think it's leaving, I suppose maybe a good way to say it is leaving with more than you came with. I think that might be what makes a good conversation is the person you're talking to leaves with a little bit more than what they actually turned up with.
Yeah.
Does that answer it well?
I couldn't agree more with that, and wouldn't even want to add more to that because I think that answered it perfectly, Tom. Okay, are you ready for your fun last question on the When Friends Come Over podcast?
I think so.
Okay, well, I lost it. So this is only for, mainly I'm just doing this on your one because I remember being in your home in Zurich and sitting around a table with some of our friends, and you brought out this list. I think you know where this is going.
I know the list. I'm usually on the other side of this list, but okay.
I might have changed it a little bit.
Great.
But I just thought, you know what? We love questions. It was such a fun time. So I was like, I'm going to bring this for Tom. Okay, you have to pick a number between 1 and 49.
17.
17?
17. 1 7.
I was going to say 70. Okay. What do you want to accomplish before the year ends, and what's stopping you?
Oh my gosh.
You picked it.
I did pick it. I know the answer exactly. And now the question is, how vulnerable do I want to be?
Or do you want to pick another question?
No. Okay, I'm going to hold. This is live and public, so there's a little bit of accountability here. This might be too vulnerable, but in the last couple of years, I felt like I'd lost my voice in a lot of ways. And I felt less comfortable with speaking out and speaking up and speaking about things that I value and I care about. And I've probably done a lot less of that than I should be doing. And one of the things that I know is niggling me and itching me and prodding me, and I'm getting pushes from every corner of the earth internally to do it, is to just start speaking more, developing more content, and communicating more, and doing that publicly, like not just hiding it and doing it privately, because I do a lot of it privately. One-to-one, I do a lot of it in small settings. So I know that I should be putting more content out, and I should be doing that definitely by the end of the year. And that is a difficult thing to speak openly about because it's been bothering me so much, but that's the honest answer.
Well, thank you, Tom. I couldn't agree more because I've had the privilege of hearing you multiple times and sitting under your leadership and being led by you in different seasons and working with you and just hearing your voice. So I know that the world will be blessed by it. So I look forward to that very much. And I know it's going to add a lot of value, because the thing is, you're having conversations with people through your content. So who couldn't have that?
Thank you. That means a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Hannah.
But I absolutely mean it, Tom. You are a great human, and I know I will see you soon, and I look forward to connecting with you again over more conversations, over more coffee. For sure.
Coffee.
We need to. I'm so sorry that I should have told you we should have been having a coffee.
Oh yeah, I've got my coffee. It's always you should have had coffee. That also helps the conversation.
Yes, it definitely does. But thank you so much, Tom. And thank you. I love what you said. You said here and now. And I think that is such a great thing that I want to adopt more in my conversations, is that I want to be here and here and now. I just liked that. And I think I want that in my mind more often. So thank you for being on When Friends Come Over podcast about effortless conversations, the art of conversations. And I'm sure you will be a guest again soon.
Oh, I'd love to.